Hi guys, Max here from the My Generation podcast. Thank you all very much for tuning in to this not official episode of the podcast. This is just a quick film review. I've just got home literally in the last sort of hour or so from seeing Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, and I just wanted to detail here some of my initial thoughts. This is a non-spoiler review, so you can go through this short podcast section with no worries about any spoilers from the movie arising. I'm just talking a little bit quieter because I don't want to wake up any neighbours as well. But I went to see the movie with my dad. We go and see all the Marvel, Avengers, and all of the Star Wars movies on midnight release together. It's just a really nice way to spend some time with my dad, because he saw the first Star Wars in cinemas back in 1977, when Episode 4 came out. So this has brought it full circle for him. We were both a little bit sick going into the movie as well, and I think coming out of the movie his health has improved and I have got a little bit more ill, but we soldier on. And interestingly, we were also sat next door to another, so we were sort of sat in a 4-seater bit, and there was another father and son duo. If they're listening to this, lovely to meet you guys. Had a great chat about Star Wars, what it's all meant, and also that whole, coming from the start of Star Wars and now coming back to this point where you've experienced it from the beginning and now you're here in what is probably the end of Star Wars, judging by, just how they've said these are the last of the mainline films. That's not really a spoiler for this movie. But getting into some of my initial thoughts about it, very, very polarizing. I will say that I definitely felt more entertained than I did when I watched The Last Jedi. There were massive plot holes within this movie, some of which I was absolutely okay with going over because I was there for the experience and I stayed immersed through some of those. Some of them were a little bit harder for me to sort of take in, and I couldn't really take those in the same way that I was taking in certain plot points. It's going to be really difficult to sort of skirt around spoilers, but if you want me to talk more about spoilers, leave a like and a comment, because if you've left likes and comments, then that'll let me know that you want me to talk in more detail about maybe Star Wars as a whole or spoilers. But getting back to The Rise of Skywalker, there were definitely some things that I wasn't sure about, and some very brave decisions sort of throughout it. Especially toward the end of the movie, there were so many things happening and changes and plot twists, and that I was just having so much hit at me that I didn't really know how to feel about it all at the time. Some of them, obviously, I said land, some of them don't so much. Referring more back to the start of the movie, though, and sort of how it goes, the movie's about 2 hours, maybe a bit over, but it felt like it was probably 4 hours worth of movie crammed down into 2 hours. Like it felt like there were scenes cut really quickly. There's so many scenes in this movie. I'm a playwright by trade, narratively, and one of the biggest faults I'd seen within my own writing was the fact that I had lots of really, really short scenes, but scenes that hadn't developed enough. And when I was watching this movie, I sort of got a first-hand experience of someone else or something else where you could feel the scenes were too fast. There's a lot of pans, a lot of wipes, because you're wiping between so many different locations. The world building in this movie is actually really, really good. It was one of the things I liked the most about Solo, a Star Wars story as well, was the world building. That's all great. You get to explore so many different textures and environments, but you don't get enough time to sort of hover with any of them. So the movie does feel a little bit numbing to a certain extent, which may be why I'm sort of struggling to sort of pin down my feelings, because it was quite a numbing experience, to be honest. I didn't feel threat in the movie. There wasn't a whole lot of suspense that gripped me, even though there were suspenseful moments. And so I feel like I was just being transported through an experience. Definitely feels quite unique to what other Star Wars movies have done. I won't get into specific details, but I wasn't a massive fan of The Last Jedi in terms of the plot. It was a beautifully shot movie, and the sound design and the scape and the textures of the environments there were really good. But from a reviewer perspective, I wasn't as big a fan of the narrative of that movie. The Rise of Skywalker is definitely a movie that takes some of the best bits from The Last Jedi for me, and tries to adapt on them, also tries to sort of tussle with some of the other bits that I wasn't as big of a fan of, and tries to give a sort of balance. And it does try to wrap everything up. It wraps up some things quite nicely, it wraps up some things quite poorly, and it ignores some things. For me, there were, as the movie was sort of wrapping up, I felt like there were some things that I still wanted closure for, or at least to see. There are definitely characters that I think miss out. There were characters that actually I think I wasn't expecting to get really good moments. There were some moments in there that were really powerful. One sort of particularly sort of right in the middle of the movie, which just kind of comes out of nowhere. And so I feel like that's the thing with this movie. There's some good and some bad, some heavy good and some heavy bad. Whereas with The Last Jedi, and I'm talking purely from a plot perspective, I wasn't very invested in that plot. And that's not to say that the filmmaking was bad within that movie, because it was a very daring, but and being a filmmaker myself, I can appreciate the scale of The Last Jedi. I rewatched it yesterday, technically just before this, because I wanted to get a feel for it again, and it grew on me slightly more, even though I wasn't as big of a fan of it. But you know, as a trilogy, it feels obviously a little bit jumbled with two different directors, controlling different aspects of the story and bringing it all together. But overall, I feel like it was better than I was expecting, because of how much it had to wrap up and how much it had to do. I didn't really know what to expect going in. The trailer set up a few scenes and a few ideas, and some of those get delivered on fully. Some of them, they take it way further than you're expecting. But I really won't go into the details of which ones they do and don't, because from literally the opening crawl, you're like, okay, I'm straight in the deep end of this story. Which is a credit to the movie, but as I said, from a more reviewing perspective, there's strong goods and bads for this movie. I'm really interested to see the reaction to this. Obviously, The Last Jedi was quite a polarizing movie for many reasons. I feel like this might be the same. Obviously, The Force Awakens feels like quite a soft reboot, so people that didn't like it tended to be people who just thought it was a bit of a remake of A New Hope. And people that did like it were sort of maybe new fans who were just coming to Star Wars for the first time, or people that were just there for a fun ride. I personally quite enjoyed The Force Awakens. And it wasn't anything special to me, but it was a decent movie, I think. Whereas, obviously, The Last Jedi was very polarizing. I think this one will be the same. It will divide people. And I don't know, because obviously not being as big of a fan of The Last Jedi, I probably should be on the side that doesn't really like it, but there are some qualities that I really see in this movie that are good, and that's where it's sort of difficult to review at this stage, which is why I'm not going to grade it. I'm not going to give any specific details, especially as being a film student and a filmmaker myself. I know just how much sheer effort has gone into this, and both of that and The Last Jedi, no matter how much I critique those movies, I still respect them, because of the technicalities that go into it and the level of experience that Star Wars has given me personally over my entire life. I mean, I grew up and Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith was the first, and I mean the very first film that got me into cinema, got me into filmmaking. I watched the behind the scenes of that so many times. I may have mentioned that on the show before. But so Star Wars has like a really, really strong personal connection to me, and that's why it's sort of hard for me to review this. But from a technical standpoint, it's really nice. There's some beautiful shots in this movie. There are some things that I would like improved, but it's the same with any movie. Like, nothing's ever finished. And just from a filmmaking standpoint, I can really appreciate all the depth that has gone into sort of bringing this all home and bringing it all together. I'm going to have to rewatch all of Star Wars now and see how I feel about it all, because as a filmmaker, I'm not so much a critic. I'm sort of putting this out there because I want to talk Star Wars, and if you want to talk Star Wars, comment below, message me. You can go to the Facebook page at the My Generation Podcast with the link below to continue this conversation. I want to talk a lot more about Star Wars, and it's an interesting film to talk about. So I think that's it really for my thoughts. Please refrain from putting any spoilers in the comments, please, because other people this is a spoiler-free review, so let's keep it a spoiler-free zone, especially for the first probably 3 weeks. My sort of rule when it comes to films and spoilers is I will not actively share a spoiler on a public page until the film is out of its cinematic release. So once its tickets are sold out in whatever part of the world I'm in, once the tickets are gone and you can't see it in cinemas anymore, that's where I feel more comfortable talking about spoilers. So if we could refrain for a couple of weeks from putting anything in the comments, obviously who knows how many views this will get, so I just want to sort of throw that out there. But I just want to thank you all very much for choosing this review out of the millions that are going to be going up. I'm going to be certainly listening to loads of reviews for this movie because it really interests me and fascinates me to hear what other people have to say about film, because it's such a fluid medium. There are things that are going to impress some people and not others. From a filmmaking standpoint, I have huge respect for this film, no matter what I end up thinking about the story or the plot or how my final thoughts come together on this movie, because I know that a film isn't just the director. It's the whole team behind it, and an entire effort has come together to put this together. So I just want to say congratulations to everyone who helped bring this to life, because it's a bold movie in terms of brave, big decisions. And we'll see what the public reaction is to those, because I don't know what it'll be, and I don't think any of us do. Thank you very much for listening to this off-the-cuff, almost, episode of the My Generation podcast. Between episodes, really. I think within probably... This is coming out on the same day that Joel's blacksmithing episode will be coming out, just in the early hours of the morning on that. Because I'm just going to post this straight up. Unlike a lot of the podcast episodes, which can tend to be pre-recorded, please do stick around for the rest of the day if you're listening to the show. I'm going to be talking to one of Kent's only blacksmiths, so I know it's a completely different subject to Star Wars, but that episode's going to be there, and then the Christmas special the week after. So there's tons of podcast content to take in. Thank you all so much for listening to this. It's been fun to share my views on Star Wars and just have a little chat about one of my favourite pastimes. I'm a big Star Wars fan, big Star Wars collector. I collect a lot of Star Wars Lego. As I'm doing this review, I'm staring at my custom-made Dryden Voss's Star Yacht that I made out of Lego. If you want to see that, I have a video of that I can share the link to, but that's, again, only if you want to see that. Thank you very much for listening, and, well, I guess I'll see you later on today for the brand new episode of the My Generation podcast.